on June 29th, 2024. State of Mexico. A white Chevrolet Suburban is pushing through heavy city traffic at high speed. The driver spots a municipal police patrol, cuts it off, and urgently demands an escort. The vehicles race onto the grounds of the nearest hospital. Inside the SUV is a young woman suffering from critical injuries. Doctors immediately begin trying to stabilize her, but they are unable to save her. She is pronounced deceased after sustaining multiple gunshot wounds. Police examine the vehicle. A clear bloodstain is visible on the right rear door. Inside the cabin, forensic investigators recover several deformed bullets. The young woman had been shot in broad daylight on a public street. Hey everyone, I research and break down only real criminal cases, relying on verified facts and official documents. If you appreciate that approach, take a second to support this video with a like or a comment. Your support helps me uncover new cases and keep this work going. At first, investigators believed the incident was a robbery gone wrong. But it doesn't take long before they realize the daytime shooting is actually tied to a ruthless battle over assets worth millions of dollars. Today we're looking at a case where public accusations of a contract crime don't come from outsiders, but from the victim's own closest relatives. This is a web of secrets surrounding one of the country's best-known families. Who was the woman inside that white SUV, and why did her death set off a chain reaction of arrests? Let's stick to the facts. Investigators quickly identify the victim. The woman who lost her life is 29-year-old Marta Paola Salcedo. She was born in Guadalajara, the capital of the state of Jalisco. She earned a degree in public relations, but instead of taking a typical office job, she built a career in sports broadcasting with determination and a clear sense of direction. She hosted her own shows, built a loyal audience, and had unrestricted access to exclusive VIP areas inside major stadiums. So how did a young broadcaster gain such easy access to the inner circle of professional sports? The answer lies in her family. Paola's brother is Carlos Salcedo, one of Mexico's biggest soccer stars, a cornerstone defender for the national team who also played in several top European leagues. Being the sister of a player at that level naturally opened doors to elite circles. For years, Paola moved in a world filled with massive salaries, luxury real estate, and exclusive endorsement deals. She knew that world inside and out. She knew the agents, the investors, and the executives who operated behind the scenes of professional sports. But in 2020, something happened that completely changed the course of her life. Martha gave birth to a son with Uruguayan soccer player Nicolás Vicones. The relationship didn't last, and the couple officially went their separate ways. Right after that, Paola made a dramatic decision. She disappeared from the public eye entirely. She stepped away from her job as a television host, shut down her media presence, and chose a much more private life. From that point on, her focus was on raising her son and building a business of her own. Paola launched a jewelry company. From the outside, everything looked picture perfect. She appeared to be an independent, financially secure woman, enjoying life running a private business, and driving luxury vehicles. Ask yourself this: how often does someone with direct access to a massive audience and the public profile that comes with having a famous relative willingly walk away from that kind of attention? Usually, the opposite happens. But in this case, every public connection was cut off almost overnight. It wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate decision. She built a wall around her private life and kept only the people she truly trusted close. But major wealth almost always brings major problems. As one of Carlos's most trusted family members, Paola didn't just have influence. She also had direct access to managing parts of his financial affairs and assets. While the media saw a successful single mother running a jewelry business, a deep divide was growing inside the Salcedo family. Marta Paola's seemingly perfect life was little more than a polished exterior, hiding serious legal disputes behind the scenes. The quiet life she had chosen turned out to be the calm before a relentless battle over control of assets worth millions of dollars. Now let's rewind to 2018. That's when the public image of a close-knit, successful family began to crack for the first time. Carlos made headlines after firing his own father as his sports agent. According to Carlos, the reason came down to money. He publicly accused his father of misusing his earnings and betraying the trust he had placed in him. But Carlos wasn't directing his accusations at his father alone. He also publicly claimed that Marta Paola had intentionally built relationships with other professional soccer players. According to him, his sister gathered private, behind-the-scenes information about his personal life, and then used it to boost the ratings of her television programs and for her own financial benefit. Before long, the public war of words turned into a hard-fought legal battle over real estate. Then another interesting detail came to light. Years earlier, Carlos had reportedly been advised to protect his assets from potential legal claims connected to unrelated matters. Following that advice, he legally transferred ownership of his home to his sister, while 2 of his vehicles were registered under their mother, Maria Isabel. Once the legal risk had passed, he naturally asked for everything to be transferred back into his name. That's where things took another turn. His mother and sister flatly refused to return the property. Their explanation was straightforward. Carlos was legally married to Andrea Navarro, and under the couple's marital property arrangement, they believed those multimillion-dollar assets could ultimately fall under Andrea's control. They had no intention of allowing that to happen. The conflict escalated even further when Marta Paola told Carlos that she believed his wife had been unfaithful. In response, the soccer star released a strongly worded public statement, saying he was fully capable of making his own decisions without anyone else's influence. At the same time, he completely cut off contact with his parents and his sister. Just think about the scale of this family dispute. Problems that would normally stay behind closed doors were being fought through withheld assets, legal filings, and public statements. But even that was only the beginning. Now fast forward 5 years to the spring of 2023. By then, The conflict had moved far beyond civil court and into the world of criminal investigations. In March, Jose Felix, the uncle of Carlos and Marta Paola, lost his life after suffering multiple gunshot wounds. It was already known that members of the family had been locked in a bitter dispute over a substantial inheritance and valuable parcels of land. According to police reports, shortly before Jose Felix's death, Marta Paola and an unidentified man met with him, and investigators allege that threats were made during that encounter. Just days later, Jose Felix was found dead. Then came an accusation that few people expected. Jose Felix's aunt went to prosecutors in the state of Jalisco and filed a formal complaint. In official documents, she directly alleged that Marta Paola and her mother, Maria Isabel, were responsible for arranging the shooting. That's a remarkable turn for a family known for wealth and public success. Wouldn't you agree? What started as a dispute over inherited property had evolved into formal allegations involving a planned violent crime. Within a single family, relatives were trying to send one another to prison on some of the most serious criminal charges available. It was in that atmosphere of constant suspicion, lawsuits, and deep family hostility that Marta Paola spent the final year of her life. Now let's go back to the summer of 2024, just days after the incident involving the white SUV. Investigators need to work backward and determine where the vehicle's journey actually began. Their search leads them to a dirt parking lot outside a traveling circus in the state of Mexico. Right away, investigators run into a major problem. The scene had been left completely unsecured. Neither local police officers nor forensic teams managed to lock down the area in time. The original evidence scattered across the pavement, the exact locations of the shell casings, the tire marks, almost all of it had been disturbed or lost within the first few chaotic hours. For any investigator, losing an untouched crime scene is a massive setback, making the entire case far more difficult to piece together. With the physical evidence compromised, detectives are forced to rely almost entirely on fragments of eyewitness accounts. The people who were in the parking lot can confirm only one thing. The attack happened without warning. The shooters appeared out of nowhere, opened fire, and disappeared within seconds in an unknown direction. Early local reports suggested it may have been a random street robbery, but the way the attackers operated didn't fit the pattern of an ordinary holdup. While investigators continue interviewing witnesses near the circus grounds, the story explodes across the national media. Reporters identify the victim, and suddenly every major television network is covering the case. But the biggest shock comes from inside the family itself. Paola's mother posts a portrait of her daughter on social media. Alongside the photo, she demands justice and makes a direct, uncompromising accusation. She publicly identifies the people she believes were behind the shooting. According to her statement, the attack was organized by her own son, Carlos, and his wife, Andrea. Take a step back and look at how extraordinary this situation becomes. Buried within her statement is another deeply uncomfortable detail for the famous soccer player. According to the family's claims, almost immediately after his sister was fatally shot, Carlos urgently contacted the executives of his club. He reportedly requested an immediate transfer, insisting that he wanted to leave Mexico as soon as possible and continue his career in either the United States or Canada. It's one thing to battle your relatives in court over property. It's something entirely different when you're trying to leave the country while facing public accusations that you played a role in an attack on your own sister. Prosecutors take those public allegations seriously enough to include them in the investigation. At that point, no warrant is issued for Carlos, but the entire direction of the case changes. Investigators launch a large-scale operation, collecting surveillance footage from traffic cameras at every major intersection surrounding the circus parking lot. Law enforcement understands that from this point forward, every possible lead has to be pursued with maximum intensity. While the family's public accusations continue making headlines, investigators spend the first days of July focused on something far less dramatic: the physical evidence. Forensic pathologists complete Marta Paola's autopsy and officially determine the exact cause of death. Their report documents 3 gunshot wounds. One of them proved unquestionably fatal. The bullet passed through her chest and severely damaged her right lung, causing rapid internal bleeding. From a medical standpoint, injuries of that severity leave virtually no chance of survival at the scene. At the same time, firearms experts finish their own examination of the white Chevrolet Suburban, now secured inside a police impound facility. Technicians carefully remove deformed bullet fragments from the door panels and the vehicle's interior. Investigators now have something they can rely on: solid physical evidence. They identify the caliber of the weapon and document the unique rifling marks left on the bullets. Later, those tiny pieces of metal could allow investigators to match a specific firearm to the shots fired in the circus parking lot. But how do you identify the shooters when the original scene was trampled by crowds within minutes? The answer comes from digital evidence. Investigators collect terabytes of surveillance footage from municipal traffic cameras and privately owned security systems covering every likely escape route. Analysts spend hours reviewing an endless stream of vehicles, synchronizing the victim's final phone call with traffic moving through nearby intersections. That painstaking work finally pays off. The surveillance footage captures the attacker's vehicle. Whoever carried out the attack had clearly planned ahead. The motorcycle they used had no license plate, making identification much more difficult. But they overlooked one critical detail. They forgot about the motorcycle itself. High-resolution cameras capture a black sport bike with bright red accents across the fuel tank. Even more important, the empty license plate bracket carries a distinctive sticker shaped like a pair of spread wings. As someone who spends a lot of time studying the logic behind criminal cases, details like this always stand out to me. If you're planning something this serious, why leave such a unique visual marker on your getaway vehicle? Ironically, that single sticker becomes the investigator's biggest advantage. Security analysts use it to identify the same motorcycle across dozens of different camera angles, allowing them to reconstruct its entire route. The motorcycle winds through narrow side streets, merges onto major highways, and eventually disappears into one specific residential neighborhood. In a matter of hours, an enormous search area is narrowed down to just a handful of city blocks in the state of Mexico. Investigators distribute the information to field units, and officers begin a targeted search. Patrol teams quietly check neighborhoods, parking lots, and private garages, looking for a black and red motorcycle with no license plate. At this point, investigators finally gain a real advantage. This is no longer a blind search across a city of millions. Law enforcement knows exactly what they're looking for, and they have a good idea where the suspect slowed down after leaving the scene. The net is closing. From here on, detectives have to move carefully. If they tip off the suspects too soon, the motorcycle could disappear overnight, and the attackers could vanish just as quickly. Then, on July 5th, 2024, only 6 days after the shooting near the circus, the investigation takes a major step forward. Police arrest 2 men. Ironically, they aren't taken into custody during a carefully planned raid. Instead, officers catch them in the middle of an entirely separate street robbery. The suspects are identified as Miguel Angel, known in criminal circles by the nickname El Pecas, and Jose Ivan. Once at the station, investigators connect both men to the same black and red motorcycle captured on surveillance cameras. Faced with mounting physical evidence, the suspects admit to being involved. Their version of events is surprisingly straightforward. According to their statements, they had been under the influence of prohibited substances that day. After running out of both money and the substances themselves, they decided to look for an easy target. They spotted a well-off woman in the dirt parking lot, attempted to steal her valuables, met unexpected resistance, and, in a panic, opened fire. Following the interrogations, both suspects are transferred to the State of Mexico Social Reintegration Center. Now, it will be up to a judge to review the evidence and determine whether there's enough to move forward with formal criminal proceedings. Now let's stop for a second and think about what we're looking at. How often does an investigation begin with a motive that seems enormous, only to end with something that appears almost ordinary? Here we have a family torn apart by millions of dollars in disputed assets, years of bitter resentment, and public accusations of a carefully planned attack. Then, almost overnight, the case appears to boil down to 2 street criminals looking for quick cash. Against the backdrop of everything we already know, that's a difficult coincidence to accept at face value. Marta Paola's mother certainly didn't believe the robbery theory. Maria Isabel continued insisting that the suspect's confession about a random street robbery was nothing more than a carefully prepared cover story. She demanded that investigators treat the 2 arrested men as hired participants, carrying out someone else's plan. And at that exact moment, the investigation takes another dramatic turn. While Maria Isabel continues making public accusations online, prosecutors make their own move. The Attorney General's office in the state of Jalisco officially issues an arrest warrant for Maria Isabel herself. So where did that warrant come from? The answer leads investigators back to the uncle who was fatally shot in the spring of 2023. Authorities had never closed that earlier investigation. Instead, they eventually arrested the man suspected of carrying out the attack. After being taken into custody, he agreed to cooperate with investigators and provided a detailed statement. According to the official record, he claimed he had been paid to carry out the crime by Maria Isabel and her late daughter, Marta Paola. After learning about the arrest warrant, Maria Isabel quickly records another video message. She firmly denies any involvement and says she has an airtight alibi. According to her, she underwent major surgery in early March of the previous year and spent 10 days confined to bed while recovering. She says Marta Paola stayed with her the entire time, caring for her during that period. Maria Isabel describes the warrant as nothing more than a fabricated act of retaliation. In her statement, she claims her famous son used his influence and connections within the prosecutor's office to silence her. With that, the entire picture changes. The person who had been publicly demanding justice is now officially considered a fugitive in a separate investigation involving allegations surrounding the death of another family member. Now let's go back to where this story began, June 29th, 2024, and carefully reconstruct the attack step by step. At around 3 o'clock that afternoon, Marta Paola is at a traveling circus in the state of Mexico. She isn't alone. She's there with her 4-year-old son, Luca, his nanny, and another man from her close circle. During the performance, Paola decides to step outside the crowded tent for some fresh air. Luca remains inside the seating area, under the nanny's supervision. Paola walks toward the dirt parking lot where her Chevrolet Suburban is parked. The man accompanying her follows a short distance behind, careful not to draw attention. When she reaches the SUV, she doesn't get inside. Instead, she stops beside the closed rear doors and answers an incoming call on her cell phone. At that exact moment, the same black and red motorcycle without license plates enters the parking lot. Jose Ivan is behind the handlebars, while Miguel Angel rides as the passenger. The firearm is already in the passenger's hands, giving him a clear angle toward the target without ever leaving the motorcycle. The bike closes the distance in seconds and comes to a stop right beside the SUV. A brief physical struggle follows. The attackers attempt to grab her valuables, but Paola instinctively fights back and refuses to hand anything over. In the next instant, Miguel Angel raises the firearm and fires 3 aimed shots from extremely close range. From that distance, there is virtually no opportunity for her to escape. When I analyze criminal cases, I always pay close attention to timing, and that's one detail I can't ignore here. The attack happened during an incredibly narrow window, precisely when Paola had stepped away from the crowd, left the busy area behind, and become completely focused on her phone call. That's an unusually precise level of timing for what is being described as an ordinary street robbery. The moment the shots are fired, Jose Ivan twists the throttle, and the motorcycle disappears from the parking lot within seconds. Paola remains on the pavement for only a brief moment. Almost immediately, the same man who had followed her out of the circus runs to her side. He quickly opens the SUV, places the injured woman into the back seat of the Chevrolet Suburban, jumps behind the wheel, and races onto the highway at top speed, desperately trying to intercept a police unit for help. And just like that, the timeline comes full circle. Now let's move ahead to the middle of July 2024, when the legal process begins producing its first major developments. On July 18th, Carlos Salcedo finally meets with investigators and gives an official statement about what happened in the circus parking lot. Then, just 2 days later, exactly what his mother had publicly predicted takes place. On July 20th, Carlos signs the paperwork terminating his contract with his current soccer club. He quietly says goodbye to the fans at Estadio Ciudad de los Deportes and leaves the country without offering any meaningful comments to the media. The emergency relocation he had reportedly been seeking becomes a reality with remarkable speed, leaving behind far more questions than answers. As of today, prosecutors in the state of Mexico have not changed their original conclusion. Their primary theory remains that the daytime shooting stemmed from a robbery attempt that spiraled out of control. Miguel Angel and Jose Ivan remain in custody, awaiting the completion of criminal proceedings and sentencing. Authorities have never filed charges alleging that the attack was ordered by Marta Paola's famous brother or his wife. From a legal standpoint, neither Carlos nor Andrea has been accused in connection with the crime. The situation is very different from Maria Isabel. The woman who demanded louder than anyone else that authorities find the people truly responsible for her daughter's death is now herself the subject of an active arrest warrant. That warrant, tied to allegations surrounding the death of her own brother, remains in effect. Maria Isabel continues to avoid authorities, fully aware that investigators intend to bring her into custody if they locate her. For me, Gloria, the most unsettling part of this story is the stark contrast between two completely different worlds. On one side, you have stadium lights, multi-million-dollar contracts, celebrity status, and the privileges that come with life at the top. On the other, you have lawsuits, deeply personal accusations made public, and gunfire in a dusty parking lot outside a traveling circus. In the end, it feels as though the Salcedo family slowly tore itself apart from within. So what do you think? Have investigators truly uncovered what happened? Or is the theory involving two opportunistic robbers under the influence of prohibited substances simply the explanation that's easiest for everyone still standing? Let me know what you think in the comments. I read every theory you share.